Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. Hi, I'm Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well, and I want to welcome you to this particular webinar. It's been sponsored by and being brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. But right now, I want to introduce you to the Executive Director of Gang Awareness and Prevention, GAP program. His name is Reverend Randall Broadhurst. Reverend Randall, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Really good to have you. Good to have you. I appreciate you giving us an opportunity to talk about your program a little bit. And so if it's okay with you, let's get your deck up and we'll just get started. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
There we go. I appreciate it. So first off, Randall, I was taking a look at this. We've got gang awareness and prevention, but also God answers prayers. I like the way you can use the acronym both ways. Can you talk about the link between spirituality or religion and the services that you're providing?
Sure thing. I was a number of years ago, before we got started, uh, God tapped me on the shoulder, said wanted me to get involved in helping with the gang problem in Sacramento. So, long story short, I said yes. And after a lot of hesitation, by the way. And
Yeah.
the verse in the Bible that I came up with, or the Lord gave me, was Ezekiel 22:30. And basically that's who'll stand in the gap for my people. And so that became sort of our charge ahead, who'll stand in the gap for the youth of Sacramento. And so that's what we do. We try to rebuild the foundations of the generations, meaning if we can start with a generation that is healthy and can say no to gangs and gang life and the thug life, then maybe the next generation, there'll be less violence.
Yeah, we talk about generational trauma quite a lot on this platform, and so it sounds like you'd agree that once a pattern is set up in a family or in a community, it's sometimes hard to break that cycle, and it sounds like that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've found over the years that it's at least 3 generations deep in this
Mm.
area, where the grandparents, the parents, the kids are have been affected by gang life, drugs, and a variety of other things. So it's hard to break out of that cycle when the kids grow up in that, and they've got their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their brothers, the sisters, their moms, the dads, and so on and so forth, all involved in it. What they tell me, I'm not guessing at this. What they tell me is that this is my life, Randall. This is who I am. This is my identity. I don't know how to get out, and so I tell them there is a way out, even though they might not think so.
Yeah. Well, you're to be commended for helping to show them the way out, sir. It's an honor to meet with you today and to talk to you and to introduce your services to our audience. Let's take a look at that second slide, if we could. You got a mission there. Can you walk us through briefly that mission? I like that acronym as well: AIM, awareness, interaction, and mentoring. Can you touch on the 3 of those really quickly?
Sure thing, Michael. So our aim is to bring awareness to the community because, like me, many people they think of gangs, they think of youth violence, and it puzzles them. They don't understand it. So what we try to do is bring awareness to the community to answer those questions. Why do kids go around shooting each other? Why are they holding up? How do they get these guns in the first place? Why do they join gangs? Many people do not understand it whatsoever. So a big part of that is to bring awareness to the community. And at the same time, we want to interact and involve ourselves with other partners and collaborators, whether it's other youth organizations, government agencies, law enforcement, whoever it is that has a finger or a hand or a part of what's going on here. Probation department, police department, DA's office, public defenders, whoever it may be, we want to have interaction with them because we want to be in that mix to help out, because we can't do it all. They can't do it all. And regardless if we're a religious organization, they need all the help they can get. That's what they tell us.
Yeah.
And then the mentoring aspect is basically the idea was, especially when I was spending time in the chaplaincy in juvenile hall, I would see these kids come in and out. You know, we do Bible study, we pray for them, get to know them a little bit. They disappear and then they come back weeks, months later. And what's going on? And I found out there's a word for it. It's called recidivism. They recommit crimes and come back in again. It's a revolving door. And so it came about that, well, who's doing anything on the outside of the walls of juvenile hall? Who's connecting with them on the outside where they live and in their neighborhoods? I found out very few people were. So that's when we started trying to mentor one man with one boy, one woman with one girl, and do one-on-one mentoring.
Mm-hmm. Before we move on, sir, to the next slide, if we could pull that last one up, there was something there that I've been waiting to talk to you about. You touch on specifically needing to touch students and parents and caregivers. And I'm wondering about, the old African proverb, it takes a village. Is that what it's tied to? But I think a lot of parents will wonder, why we're really a part of that mix. Maybe parents will think, I send them to school and then it's the teacher's issue, or they got into trouble and they're where they're at and then that's somebody else's issue. Why are you building in that family structure into what you're doing?
Well, mainly because again, I go back to all the years, 17 years going into juvenile hall and meeting the parents or grandparents or aunties and uncles. And they would tell me, will you help us? Will you help my son? They feel they can't count on their attorney. They can't count on probation department or the judicial system necessarily. That's a whole nother discussion for another time, I think. But they're asking for help because they know their teenagers are out of control and they don't know where to turn and how to solve that problem. So they want our help. They want the interaction. And then when I talk to the kids about it, are you okay with us if we get involved with you on the outside when you get released? Are you okay with us getting to know moms? Are you okay with us getting to know the rest of your family? And they'll say, sure, that's fine. That's okay. So that's good. I don't think we can be good at mentoring and good at working with that if we're not working alongside the family, not to take their place, but to work alongside.
I'd agree with you. I appreciate you kind of walking us through that. Let's take a look at that deck and get to that next slide. This talks about who you're serving, and you talk specifically about high-risk juveniles here, Randall. I have to say that for me, I'd like you to talk about, it sounds like such a powerful program. For someone maybe like me, I've never been in the walls of a jail before, and it might seem a little daunting to think about forming a relationship with someone you don't know and building a relationship and cultivating one and getting a youth to trust you and then getting him or her to help to let you help them. Can you talk about how you form a relationship behind the walls of a jail or a prison?
Well, that's a great question. And a lot of people ask that question. So it is a little daunting. especially if you go inside for the first time and hear the clanking of the doors. And it's an eerie feeling to begin with. But here's what we found. We found that the kids inside, they don't necessarily want to be um, in jail. They don't want to have a lifetime of prison. Most of them, they don't like it. They don't necessarily want to be involved in the gangs, even though it's hard for them to admit that sometimes. So what they do tell us, once you get to know them, once you develop a little bit of a bond, which doesn't take long, by the way, to build that trust. Once they do that, they'll admit that, hey, if you got a way for me to get out of this thing, I'm down with that. I'm good. Because in their mind, they're thinking, I'm not going to live very long anyway. So I'm either going to die young, and very few of them really want to die young, or I'm going to spend a whole lot of time in big boy prison, and I don't really want to do that either. So if you reach out your hand and say, look, I'll help you, they'll take your hand, even from a guy like me. I'm not tatted up. I've never been shot up, stabbed up, ganged up, prisoned up, or anything like that. But if they'll trust me, they'll trust pretty much anybody if they know you're genuine and you're sincere about why you want to help them.
I met you about 15 minutes ago, Randall, so I can see that how good you are at making connections. But I've got to ask this question. You just said it doesn't take long. And again, I would have thought before sitting down to talk to you that it might take longer than what you're saying. When you say it doesn't take long, how long does it typically take? And I know there's no typical youth, there's no one size fits all, but just generally speaking, how long does it take you or one of the mentors to really make that connection so that you can begin to get some work done?
Well, if they're in there long enough, it might take, and this is a generalization, okay? It might take 2 to 3, maybe up to 6 months. But 2 months is a pretty short time, because remember, you're seeing them in our program. We're going in once a week for about an hour. So that's only an hour, but sometimes they're not even seeing family members. They're not even getting visits. And you're typically the only person, let's say one of the few people going in and saying, hey, no strings attached. I'm here. I don't get paid to come in. I don't get, there's no reward for me coming in here. I'm spending my time to be with you, and I'm willing to help you, and our program's willing to help you when you get out, find a job, make money, finish your education, so on and so forth. We're willing to do that if you'll meet us halfway. And after they hear that enough time and you keep coming back consistently, they're saying, there's got to be something to this. They keep coming back. They keep talking to me, and I can't scare them away. So maybe I should trust them.
Yeah. That's powerful. I'd love to shadow you at some point and just watch that work happen. I admire it quite a lot. Let's take a look at that deck and get to the next slide if we could. You got 4 foundational principles there. Do you want to maybe touch on 1 or 2 of those, Randall, if you would? We don't need to
actually there's 8. We call it the 8 F's. And and I'll just start with, I just hit on a couple. One is, what teenager doesn't want to have fun? Okay, they're never too old to have fun. They really do want to have fun. We just try to show them a way to have fun without getting into trouble. And what teenager do you know that doesn't want to eat food all the time? So everything we do, any program we have, when we come inside, a lot of the times we drive probation crazy. On the outside, all our programs, there's always food, and we don't charge for anything. The kids never pay for anything. Everything is free. Doesn't matter if it's an extravagant meal or it's just snacks. It's going out to McDonald's or some fancier restaurant. It doesn't matter. Food and fun and a lot of these other things are important to them. So
I'm sorry, Randall, touch on 1 in particular, if you would, friendships, because that was one where you mentioned their new relationships require letting go of old homies. And we talk a lot with youth on this platform. It's sometimes it's a little hard to convince someone if they want a different outcome, they've got to do things a little differently. And sometimes that means letting go of someone that maybe at one point was a really good friend, but maybe not so much anymore. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and that is hard. That's not an easy one. I mean, the fun and the food is pretty easy. The friendships, they're not real quick to let go of the old homies and their old friends. But I ask them, okay, why are you in here? Did these guys help you come in? Nope. Are they part of the reason you're in here? Yeah. Guess what? Your co-Ds, your co-defendants, they're saying the same thing about you. So, and if they didn't get caught, they're quote unquote friends. I said, they're putting money on your phone? No. Are they sending you food packages? Are they doing anything? Are they visiting you? No, no, no. Are they chasing after your girl? Yep. So they're not really good friends at all, are they? So I just hit them. We just hit them with the facts. We hit them with the truth, and they can't deny it. So if you could make some new friends that didn't, where you didn't end up doing criminal activity and coming in here, would you be interested? And reluctantly, they say yes. Most of them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard. That connection to the kids they grew up with or the kids they run the streets with, it's hard to break that connection. It really is.
Yeah, and I would think maybe, we could talk about some of these topics all day. I think that in a community, if a youth has begun down a path that's not great, and they make a connection with someone fairly early, it's a little difficult to then a few years later convince them that that's not someone. If even if at one point it was a good friendship, I would think that maybe at one point it was working really well. But once it's not working really well, it's hard for young people sometimes, and old people, frankly, to figure out they got to let something go to get a different result.
It's true. It's true. It's not
Yeah,
easy,
yeah,
but you got to start somewhere. And a lot of times it's court ordered. They're saying you can't be with these other guys. You can't go see them as part of your probation responsibility. You can't do it. So we say, hey, let's meet some other guys.
yeah, yeah. Let's take a look at that next slide. I think we had it up a second ago. Strategies for helping youth. Can you touch on those just a little bit, Brandon?
Sure. I mean, every kid in there, on the inside or the outside, the number one thing they want to do is get rich. They want to make money. Of course, that, as we all know, that's primarily born out of poverty. Okay. If I had money, it would solve all my problems. Well, we know as adults, that's not really true. Sometimes money can give you more problems. All right. But telling a 13, 14, 16-year-old kid that is a whole nother thing. So with that, we say, look, you want to make money? That's fine. That's where the finances and our 8Fs come in. We'll help you make money legally. Are you okay with not slinging dope? Are you okay with not pimping or pandering? Are you okay without holding somebody up and stealing? If we can get you a job making legal money? And 90% of the time, they'll say yes. But even that's difficult because it's, from their standpoint, a lot of them, it's easy money having a gun and robbing somebody rather than actually working. But that's what we try to do. We try to find them jobs, training for jobs, and it's a big part of what we do. Because if they can make money legally, the thought is, jobs versus bullets.
Yeah. You remind me of a young person we had in our summer institute just over the summer, Brother Be Well Summer Institute, and we were all surprised that he came from a gang troubled area in Chicago. It was a virtual event, and he talked really passionately with some of his peers about that influence of gangs and how if you grow up in that community, it's hard to kind of extricate yourself from it. It's hard to know where to go and how to start that. So hats off to you and your colleagues for showing you the path out of that type of a lifestyle.
Well, on that note, let me just take a couple of seconds. On that note, we all hear the same thing. Well, the gangs become like a family, right? And so you question, well, how do they become family? It's because the kids, it go, and I know this is maybe going to come up a little bit later, but if the family unit, their blood family is weakened somehow, maybe because the father is not there, and so you got an overworked mother that's trying to raise a whole lot of kids and work 2 or 3 jobs, or maybe they're involved in drugs somehow to try to ease the pain or whatever. So the family life is struggling. It's fractured. So the kids are going to go out in the streets and look for love. They're going to look for money. They're going to look for support if it's not there in the home. And that's not to judge anybody or point fingers at anybody. That's just a reality that that's part of the reason they're driven. That the home life is not a secure, safe, good, healthy environment. So they're going to go somewhere else to look for it.
Appreciate that perspective. I have heard similar things before, but never put so succinctly. So really appreciate that, Randall. I think a lot of people are going to get something out of that. Let's take a look at that deck and go to that next slide if we could. Anything you want to touch on there, sir?
Yeah, well, a lot of the kids like to make music, get their poems down, their lines and their words, and they're very creative and they're very intelligent when it comes to telling their story. That's what they want to do. They're telling their story, so they want to rap out their story. So we tell them one of the commercial, if you will, what we're trying to convince them. Well, you come out, you can have free access to our music studio and our videography studio. You can make music. You can get your beats down. We got a professional studio. It's really nice. We got people that know what they're doing. It doesn't cost them a dime, and you can come out and do it. And then we try to keep making those changes and have mentoring and influence their behavior once they get into the studio. Like, hey, you don't need to use the N word. You don't need to cuss to get your point across. You don't need to do any of that. You can adjust that and make it, let's say, a radio version of your story. But they love a studio. The idea of being able to get into a studio was a big deal to a lot of the kids.
That's fantastic. What was the inspiration for that? How'd you come to that? Where'd you get that idea? It's a great idea.
I'm not sure, except a lot of the kids are in there saying, well, what do you want to be? They want to be a rap artist or a basketball player, or they just want to make money, and they see rap as a way to make a lot of money. Of course, that's a whole nother discussion for another of these interviews. But the fact is that they show me their words and they'll rap to me at the tables, and it's very poetic. It's very amazing, really. And man, I said, you need to get that recorded. So that, they're the ones teaching me when I go inside.
That's powerful. It's great to hear too. Let's take a look at that next slide. We've got just a few more minutes here today. Those are your services there, Randall. Any one or two of them? We touched on a few of those. We talked about parenting adolescents, and maybe you could touch on that. I'm a parent myself. I've got 2 adult kids, and any parent listening and watching this right now, we sometimes learn kind of on the go as we're making it up as we go along, so to speak. And it's not as obvious to some people that you got to change your parenting style as the child grows. And it's hard sometimes for us to see a 15-year-old as a 15-year-old. We're still seeing the 5-year-old or even the 3-year-old. So can you talk about working with parents to get them to change their approach to the way they're managing, or that's not the great word, the way they're dealing with and interacting with and supporting their youth?
Well, to be perfectly honest, we don't teach the parents how to parent. I mean, that if there was more of me and more of our other volunteers and something that a lot of our folks that work with us want to do, we would help teach parenting classes. It's something somebody should do, make a whole ministry, a whole organization out of it. So we're trying to teach these kids how to be parents, because many of them are having kids while they're inside. I mean, I've had kids in there with 2 or 3 kids, and they're 15, 16 years old. So it's the whole, and when we talk to the parents and they're asking for our help, like I mentioned before, what do I do? How do I help? And sometimes they'll go and get involved in our training, our mentor training. And it all boils down to this: for any kind of parenting, spend time with your child. And both the father and the mother spend time with your child. And that's very difficult if the father leaves and goes somewhere else or gets imprisoned or dies. or doesn't take that responsibility, then leaves it with a single parent. Sometimes it's the father and the mother's gone. So single parenting is very difficult. Parenting at all is difficult, yet alone doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
And many of the kids we work with, they might have a lot of siblings that are from different parents. And so the mother has different partners. And then you have a lot of kids. And then you have, it creates a dynamic in the house without going into details that makes it very difficult for parents to parent because they're just trying to survive, put food on the table. They can't go to all
Right.
the baseball games and football games and basketball games and so on and so forth because they're just trying to get by and pay their bills. It's
Sure.
difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then adolescents as parents, we know from some of the work we do with Mental Health California here at Mental Health California, young people, our brains haven't even fully developed ourselves until we're in our mid to late 20s. And for young
That's
men,
right.
it's even older. So they're not really emotionally and mentally ready to take on the task that they unfortunately that they have chosen to take on. And so we need organizations like you to help them. So
And
again,
that's why you
that's
have
awesome.
grandparents raising their grandchildren because the mother
Yeah.
can't handle it. She's a teenager herself, and her mom can't handle it because she's got her
Right.
own kids running around. So now you got 50, 60, 70-year-old grandparents taking care of these grandbabies. It's not fair, it's not right, it's not good. And now we've got another generation of kids growing up that may end up in the same pipeline.
Yeah. So thank God you're there. Thank God you're there. Let's take a look at that deck of just a few more minutes we've got here today, Randall. The Speakers Bureau. Do you want to talk about? You got speakers that you offer up to the community. You want to touch on it for a second?
Sure. We have a whole variety of people that we've had over the years that have joined us. I mean, we get people that are still incarcerated that hear about us, and when they come out, they want to get involved in our program because they want to give back. I just got a call, an illustration from a social worker in Oakland, I believe it is, Contra Costa County, and they have somebody that's coming out. They're going to move here to Carmichael, and they were incarcerated at age 15 and a half. After 20 plus years incarcerated, they're able to get out on from a murder charge. So they were one of these kids that we work with that is now getting out. They were adjudicated as an adult, and they want to give back. They want to talk to these kids and say, hey, you don't need to do this. Let me tell you what it's like spending 20 years in prison when you're 16 years old. You don't want to do that. And then we have another example is an apartment complex where I got contacted this week, and they said, we've got gang issues going on around us. Can you send out some folks to talk to the kids in our apartments so that they don't get tempted to join up with these gangs? And we say, sure. So our Speakers Bureau are what they call these days credible messengers, people that have been there, done that, know all about it, changed their life around. They found Jesus, or they found a different way of life to be legal. And they want to tell kids and parents that, hey, you don't have to be in a gang to be important. You don't have to do that lifestyle. So we got plenty of people to speak if people want to do it, want us to do that.
And I'm sure we've got your contact information at the end of this. I'm sure you'll be hearing from some folks, Randall, that might want to help. Just before we go, one more slide. I want us to go to the slide. I think it's GAP events. So we talked about our mentoring a little bit.
Yes, what we try to do is we train people to be mentors and have them do one-on-one mentoring, men with boys and women with the girls. And then if you go to that next slide, what we try to do is have events like one of them is called Bulletproof, which used to be once a month, where we'd have people come in, older people, men and women, give their testimony. And we'd have food. We have rap artists. The kids can get up and get on the microphone and tell their story. So we have after school programs. We have resources. And it's all geared towards keeping kids off the street, keeping the violence out of the streets, and making our neighborhoods safe. That's what we're trying to do. Ages 14 to 24, by the way, so it goes all the way up through age 24, even though I still mentor kids that are 25, 26, 27 years old. But now I have them, they've got their life turned around. So now they're helping us in our program, like our in-school program, CalVIP. We go inside 9 different schools in the Sac City Unified School District, 5 middle schools, 4 high schools, and we teach a evidence-based curriculum in there to try to get the kids at risk before they make it to juvenile hall, whether they're in risk. So we're trying to do some preventive stuff inside the schools. I invite people, whoever see this, go to our website. It's a pretty active, up-to-date website. There's testimonies on there. There's videos. There's explanations how you can become one of our volunteers. We're going to have a new training, mandatory training, that's going to start the first Saturday in November. And everything you want to find out about who we are and what we are is on that website.
It has been an honor to meet you, Reverend Randall Broadhurst. I really appreciate you, sir. And it's been good to get to know you. Hats off to you and your team for putting such a comprehensive, invaluable program together. And frankly, you're taking on you called it at the beginning, God's work. I can see that in your eyes and I can hear it in your voice. So I just want to thank you for doing what you do for our young people. I thank you for checking out this video. If you like something that you are interested in, we'll be highlighting a number of nonprofits that are doing equally incredible work in the community. So come on back and we'll let you know what's up. This particular production has been brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. That's Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. And we've got a website for you. Go to bluesky.blueshieldca.com. That's bluesky.blueshieldca.com for all the information on that. For information on us, you can check out Mental Health California's site. It's mentalhealthca.org. That's mentalhealthca.org. My name is Michael P. Coleman. I'm content director for one of Mental Health California's signature initiatives, Brother Be Well. It's always a pleasure for me to be with you. And I want to ask you to do 2 things for me, if you would. Please take great care of yourself, and then please take great care of somebody else. Till next time, bye-bye.